Available at audible.com. Defiance Press and Publishing presents The Second Pearl, written by Mike Bentley, narrated by Edison McDaniels. Yao had the satisfaction of knowing that 12 heavy torpedoes were racing toward the Yankee task force. The enemy would immediately perceive the threat, but it takes an 1,100-foot aircraft carrier some time to turn, and at 60 miles per hour, a torpedo can travel 4 miles in a hurry. The USS Pinckney, DDG-91, the USS Rafael Peralta, DDG-115, and the USS Kidd, DDG-100, were the Southern picket destroyers, and the Peralta had drawn the short straw. She was directly between the mini-subs and the Roosevelt, and was blown apart by 3 of the 12 torpedoes. Only half her crew survived. Captain Yao watched this dramatic scene with professional coldness, but then his life and that of his crew ended. The Helo's torpedo detonated directly amidships under his keel, and his smallish sub just blew in half. She sank away to the bottom with no survivors. Young torpedoman Zhao died a few seconds later, but he experienced the greatest moment of his life when he heard his little brother strike a Yankee ship and explode. 9 torpedoes from the first volley continued to race toward the 3 ships in the middle of the task force. One of Captain Yao's Dash-9s had been aimed deep to kill any U.S. submarine that might be lurking there, and they detected one Yankee boat as it raced north. There were no destroyers between the remaining torpedoes and the carrier or cruisers now, and the first or westernmost fish quickly covered the limited distance between the now-dead mini-sub and the USS Bunker Hill. It struck her on the port beam just aft of the bridge as she turned away, and it exploded with such force that it opened a 30-foot hole to the sea. Her quick-thinking captain ordered evacuation of the lower starboard side compartments and began counterflooding those spaces, and the ship responded well and stabilized, but she had to slow to effect repairs. The next torpedo missed aft of her stern and ran out of fuel before doing any additional damage. USS Alexandria. In the American submarine's attack center, Captain Walsh had done everything by the book, but now he was racing back to his normal station to face the southern threat. The Chi-Coms had executed a perfect ambush, including sending 1 torpedo deep against naturally suspected submarines. He was an experienced skipper and used to the 3-dimensional chessboard that was historical submarine warfare, so he was ready for the next attack. He ordered an emergency dive to pass under the oncoming threat, but just didn't have enough time. The U-9 struck the Alexandria's rudder and blew most of it off. "Emergency blow, Chief," Walsh commanded, the senior NCO manning the ballast and trim tanks, and he shot compressed air into the correct spaces to achieve positive buoyancy. The boat was moving fast at about 2/3 power, and she responded quickly as the helmsman pulled the yokes controlling the diving planes back into their laps. Alexandria raced towards the surface, fortunately far enough from the ships to avoid ramming them from below. "Damage report," he called over to the lieutenant monitoring the large schematic of the sub that indicated any internal fires or breaches in the hull. "The hull is intact, Skipper. The rudder is damaged, but there are no fires, and the planes are functional." Like everyone after a close call, he was sweating bullets. Walsh then pulled down the mic to reassure the crew. "Attention all hands. Our hull is intact, and we are surfacing. We will do a thorough damage assessment and make a decision about next steps. Everyone just do your jobs, and we'll be okay." His assurances were necessary and allowed everyone to relax and focus. They'd get to the surface, then, if necessary, he'd get everyone off quickly. But he didn't think the boat would sink. Hull integrity was everything to a submarine. If it came down to it, suffering the indignity of being towed to port was one all hands could live with. While this drama unfolded on the Alexandria, the 7 remaining torpedoes closed rapidly on the remaining targets. The first one passed harmlessly between the Bunker Hill and the Roosevelt, but the next 3 struck the carrier from directly amidships and along her port quarter. She was unable to turn away in time, and her flank was just too exposed. The final 3 fish from the salvo had the same result. The next one in line missed, passing between the stern of the stricken carrier and the Cape St. George. But the next 2 hit the cruiser on her exposed flank. She, too, was holed at the waterline, and her port propeller blade was somehow damaged, too. All in all, it was extreme disaster or success, depending on your international point of view. The Helos dropped torpedoes on the remaining 2 subs and blew them apart before they could fire another salvo, but the aviator's success was too little, too late. The USS Roosevelt and Carrier Strike Group 9 were out of business. Available at audible.com.